James Carter, a 38-year-old white American millionaire, stood in his sleek Manhattan office, its floor-to-ceiling glass walls framing the restless city below. The morning sun glinted off steel skyscrapers, but James focused on his phone buzzing for the third time that day. The polished hardwood floors reflected his restless pacing, his blue eyes narrowing with each vibration. At precisely 10:32 a.m., his assistant's voice crackled through the speaker, tinged with panic. "Ms. Reynolds canceled, sir. Family emergency. She can't make dinner tonight." James stopped mid-stride, his pale skin flushed with frustration, his jaw tightening as he gripped the phone. "What's her excuse this time?" His tone was icy, though the answer hardly mattered. Tonight's dinner wasn't about companionship. It was a high-stakes meeting with Hans Mueller, a German investor, whose approval could secure a $50 million deal for sustainable urban development. Appearances mattered as much as contracts, and going alone would signal weakness. Mueller was ruthless in his scrutiny. He would notice. The assistant hesitated. "The other options, Ms. Carter and Ms. Vaughn, are unavailable. It's too last minute." James exhaled sharply, his broad shoulders tense beneath the navy fabric of his tailored suit. At 38, his empire had been built on precision and discipline, not improvisation. "Find someone," he said at last, his voice low but firm. "Anyone. This deal can't wait." He ended the call abruptly, running a hand through his neatly trimmed brown hair, the clock's weight pressing into his thoughts. Every second brought him closer to disaster. Outside on the rooftop garden of Carter Enterprises, Maya Johnson worked quietly, unaware of the storm brewing above her. At 32, the Black American gardener had turned forgotten rooftops and barren corners of New York into vibrant ecosystems. She knelt among rows of lavender, her rich brown skin glowing in the late morning sun, her hands steady as she adjusted stems with a care that silenced the chaos of the city below. Dressed in worn overalls and muddy boots, her hair tied back with a green scarf, Maya was the antithesis of James's world of polished steel and tailored power. For her, gardening wasn't just a job, but a legacy. Raised by her grandmother Esther in Harlem, Maya had learned that plants responded to patience, not pretense. Esther had often said, "The soil doesn't care who you are. It only cares if you nurture it." That truth had carried Maya through loss, rejection, and years of being dismissed as a gardener. From his office window above, James's gaze drifted toward the garden. His eyes caught the deliberate movements of the woman below her presence, grounding in a way that unsettled him. He had seen her countless times, coaxing life from soil with a quiet authority he envied. An idea formed, reckless, absurd, but undeniable. Moments later, the elevator doors slid open on the rooftop, and James entered the sunlight. The scent of lavender and damp earth clashed with the crisp cologne clinging to him. Maya looked up, her dark eyes narrowing as she spotted his polished figure cutting across her domain. "Mr. Carter," she asked, wiping her hands on a rag, her voice calm but cautious. "Maya, I need to talk." His tone was clipped, betraying his urgency. At 6'2", he towered over her 5'5" frame, but her steady gaze made him feel unexpectedly exposed. She tilted her head, lips curving into a skeptical smile. "A proposal. About the garden." James shook his head. "My date for a business dinner was canceled. It's tonight, and I can't go alone. Please come with me. I'll pay you well." His words tumbled out sharp and transactional, as though he were closing another deal. Maya blinked in disbelief, then crossed her arms. "You're serious? You want me, your gardener, to sit at some fancy dinner?" Her tone carried defiance. Yet beneath it, curiosity flickered. "It's a critical meeting," James pressed, softening his tone. "Mueller doesn't do business with lone wolves. I need someone who can hold their own. You're here, and I trust you." The admission startled him. He meant it. Maya's eyes searched his weighing sincerity against desperation. Esther's voice echoed in her memory. Never let them box you in. How much she asked at last, testing him. 10,000. James answered without hesitation. Maya's breath caught, though her expression remained steady. The money was tempting, but more than that, the challenge stirred her. To step into a room that had always excluded her. This was about more than James Carter's deal. I'll do it, she said firmly. But don't expect me to play a role I'm not. I'm no one's decoration. Relief washed over James, rare and raw. Just be you, he said. That's enough. That evening in her modest Harlem apartment, Maya stood before a cracked window as dusk filtered soft light across her sanctuary. Green vines curled along the shelves, succulents thrived on the sill, and the air was rich with the scent of soil. She placed her muddy boots by the door and opened the closet, revealing a navy dress she hadn't worn in years. Its simple silhouette carried memories of a failed job interview, an upscale landscape design firm that had dismissed her expertise with a cold smile and the words, "We need vision, not a gardener." The memory still burned. Her gaze shifted to a faded photo on her nightstand. Esther kneeling in their old backyard, hands weathered yet strong among blooming marigolds. Maya touched the frame gently, hearing her grandmother's voice once more. So, can you, Maya? Don't let anyone box you in. Sliding into the navy dress, Maya tied her hair into a simple bun, her loose curls pinned neatly away. Silver earrings, a gift from Esther, glinted softly against her skin. She studied her reflection in the chipped mirror, a woman caught between two worlds, nerves taut but defiance stirring within. Her phone buzzed. A message from James Carr arrives at 6. Thank you, Maya. She exhaled slowly, smoothing the dress. Let's show them, she whispered, her voice steady. Gathering a small black purse and stepping into low heels, she walked out into the Harlem dusk. The hum of the city surrounded her, familiar, yet charged with possibility. A black car waited by the curb. Maya glanced once at the succulents silhouetted in her window, then stepped inside. The door closed behind her quietly, and the city blurred past. Tonight she was no one's decoration. Tonight she would be seen. Meanwhile, in his penthouse dressing room, James Carter struggled with his silk tie. His reflection fractured in the mirror. Blue eyes shadowed with doubt stared back. He remembered the headlines from a year ago. Carter's empire crumbles, and the betrayal of his ex-wife Lauren Prescott, who had leaked deal details to a rival. That humiliation still lingered, poisoning every boardroom. But tonight was different. Tonight, he was betting on Maya Johnson, a woman whose world of dirt and blooms seemed absurdly far from his. Yet, when she had said, "I'm no one's decoration," something in him believed her. He tightened the knot, straightened his jacket, and glanced again at the skyline. It was almost time. The elevator doors parted to a quiet ding, and James stepped into his office with a steadiness he did not feel. His phone vibrated 3 times in quick succession. On the screen, an email with no sender name, only a string of numbers. He tapped it open. A photo filled the display. He and Maya were on the hotel terrace last night, and city lights pooled around them like molten gold. The angle made their closeness look intimate. Her smile, captured mid-breath, read as something else entirely. Underneath a caption in bold, "Prop lover. Greenwashing hoax." 2 journalists were CC'd, both notorious for feasting on blood-in-the-water business scandals. James's throat tightened. He hit the intercom. "Evan, now." His assistant hurried in, eyes wide. James spun the screen toward him. "Trace it. Find me who sent this." Evan swallowed. "On it. Do you want me to notify legal?" "Not yet," James said. "First, I want a source." The door closed. For a heartbeat, The office felt too bright, too visible glass on every side. He turned his phone face down and stared at his reflection in the sheen of the desk, a man tired of defending the truth. Maya was halfway up the stairs to the rooftop when her phone buzzed too. Same image, same caption. Her jaw set. She glanced at the lavender, its gray-green spikes catching morning light, and slowed her breath. The garden did not care about rumors. It cared about water, light, and time. She typed, "Don't respond to press yet. Meet me on the roof in 10 minutes. Bring Evan." James arrived first. His tie was loose. The sun had made a copper edge of the city. Evan jogged in a minute later. "We counter with proof," Maya said, crisp, businesslike. "Water use logs, pollinator counts and runoff capture. Facts beat captions." Evan shifted. "Or we lie low and wait it out, less oxygen for the story." Maya studied him. "You sure about that?" He nodded quickly. Too quickly. As he turned, his eyes snagged on the control panel housing the storage tank, lingering a fraction of a second longer than they should have. Maya filed that away. "Tonight," she said to James, "invite Mueller here. Let him see for himself." James gave a single decisive nod. Done. By late afternoon, the sky turned the color of old coins. Mueller arrived with a young aide and a poker face that gave nothing away. They walked the beds in silence, while Maya talked through native species root depth and the way the lavender's dry tolerance reduced waste even in August heat. She ended at the irrigation manifold. James gestured for Evan. "Open the valve. Let's show flow." Evan knelt and twisted the handle. Nothing. No hum of pump. No whisper of water. Maya crouched beside him. She loosened a secondary coupling, nudged a manual bypass, and listened. A low gurgle answered from the tank. Then a clean ribbon of water sighed through the lines. The drip emitters began to bead. "Redundancy," Maya said evenly. "In case of a shutdown, we can demonstrate charge and flow." Mueller stepped closer. His gaze dropped to a hairline gouge on the pipe near the shutoff. Fresh plastic dust clung like sugar. He touched it with a thumb, then wiped his hand on a handkerchief, eyes level. "Someone's been here." James's heartbeat spiked. He did not look at Evan. The phone call came while they were still on the roof. Lauren filled the screen in high definition. Hair immaculate, smile surgical. "Darling," she purred, "you look flushed. Don't worry by sundown. Financial Herald runs an exclusive about your charming PR strategy. A gardener and a gala. It practically writes itself." "You planted this," James said. She said lightly, "I water what wants to grow," then tilted the camera to reveal who stood beside her. Richard Ellison, raising a glass. "Cheers." She ended the call. Maya exhaled through her nose. "We get ahead of it. We publish our data." Mueller's aide watched, expression unreadable. Mueller, meanwhile, studied Maya as though weighing the space between a claim and a conviction. "Give me 24 hours, James said to him. "You'll have more than claims." 20, Mueller replied. "The markets sleep poorly." He nodded toward the manifold. "And fix your pipes." They met in the glass conference room 2 floors down. Screens glowed. Numbers marched. Maya opened a folder, time-lapse images of the rooftop from installation to present taken every 2 days. Lavender went from sparse to dense. A hoop net near the hives recorded bee counts. A motion camera in the shade had logged returning bird species. 6 months, she said. Xeric natives stabilized in 8 weeks. Irrigation decreased by 31% after month 3. The bees came back. So did the warblers. A shareholder on Mueller's call line cleared his throat. "Pretty pictures." Maya clicked on the ledger. Water bills cross-checked with tank meters. Flow logs are hashed monthly, and about those hashes the shareholder cut in. Verify 1. James signaled IT. They pulled a checksum from last month's log. Red text blinked. Mismatch. Silence fell like a dropped pane of glass. Evan spoke carefully. The export tool may have updated the file header. Maya didn't move. Then she stood, walked out and returned with a small SD card case, dirt-smudged and faintly scented of crushed lavender. "What is that?" the shareholder asked. "A habit I learned from my grandmother," Maya said. "Always keep seeds in more than one jar." She slotted the card into the reader and pulled the same file from an untouched archive. The checksum verified. Green. Solid. Mueller's eyes lit the faintest glint. He said nothing. He didn't need to. Evan's face had gone a shade paler. After the call, Mueller asked for a walk, just him and Maya. They stepped into a narrow corridor lined with old blueprints. "I lost a garden once," he said quietly. "Developers paved it. I've been suspicious ever since. Maya said I know what it's like to watch something living be dismissed. I won't fudge numbers to win a room." He inclined his head. "Then help me find who would." His gaze was keen. "You saw something on that roof." She hesitated, then told him about the fresh gouge, Evan's glance, and how the shutoff had failed and the bypass had sung. "No proof yet," she said, "but there's a pattern. Make the system look like it doesn't work, then call it a stunt." "Patterns are enough to bait a trap," Mueller said. At dusk, the rooftop turned to copper and smoke. Hidden behind the greenhouse glass, a camera watched the manifold. Maya reset the valve. James waited in the shadows near the door, his outline cut from dusk. The city's wind smelled of iron and rain. A key scraped. The door opened. Richard slipped in, a wolf in pinstripes with Evan carrying a small cutting tool behind him. "Quick," Richard whispered. "One nick. He brings the investor. Nothing flows. We leak." The photo. Everyone laughs. He froze. Water hissed. The valve, already half-primed, released. A clean, pressurized arc burst out and baptized them both. The cutting tool slipped, clanked, and skittered away. The camera tracked everything from the greenhouse, the intrusion, the tool, the flinch. James stepped forward and hit the work light. The scene turned theater bright. Richard blinked through droplets. "This is entrapment." "It's called maintenance," James said, "and record-keeping." A second door opened. Lauren entered in a ribbon of red. She took in the tableau with clinical detachment. "I'm not here to interfere," she said, voice almost bored. "I prefer watching people do it to themselves." Then she tilted her head at Evan. "Clean up." Evan couldn't meet anyone's eyes. The next hour was a blur of statements and calls. James's legal team compiled the footage. Mueller's office drafted a release. Preliminary evidence suggests third-party interference with Carter Enterprises' irrigation system. Sustainability claims remain under review. He added a line himself. "We are inviting Ms. Johnson to co-lead the regenerative landscape workstream contingent on technical validation." "Co-lead," he said to James over the phone. "If it is to be enduring, it needs two hands." James looked at Maya. She had been quiet since the trap, watchful, not gloating. "You in?" he asked. "If we lead, we do it right," she said. "Transparent soil tests. Community input. No window dressing." Mueller chuckled softly. At last, someone allergic to window dressing. They hung up. The night tasted suddenly of relief. James turned to Maya. "You carried us. We carried us," she corrected. "Together." He was about to answer when her phone vibrated again. No name, no number, just a map attachment and a single line of text. "Careful. The project site isn't clean." She opened the file. Several parcels glowed in red, an old environmental overlay. At the bottom, a scanned authorization signature curved in neat ink. Lauren Prescott. The wind lifted across the roof, bringing the scent of lavender and rain. Maya's mouth went dry. "What is it?" James asked. She handed him the screen. The city glinted all around them. Somewhere below, sirens threaded the streets. Above, clouds gathered heavy as unshed truth. "Looks like the ground we want to heal," she said, voice low, was poisoned long before we arrived. They stood with the wind dragging the scent of rain across the rooftop, the map glowing cold on Maya's phone. Red blocks pulsed where the future park and housing would go. At the bottom, that tidy signature, Lauren Prescott. Old contamination overlay. Maya said, steadying her voice. "We need independent tests, chain of custody. No shortcuts." James's reply was immediate. "I'll cover the cost." And we loop Mueller in before anyone else. He texted the investor a single line: "Potential soil issue. We're moving to verify with an independent lab. Full transparency." The response came back 2 minutes later. "You have 48 hours. Then the board votes." Maya pocketed the phone. "Then we start now." The city records office smelled like dust and toner, and the slow grind of bureaucracy. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Behind safety glass, a clerk in a sweater vest pushed a stack of forms toward them, as if they were a tide he had decided not to fight. "We're looking for environmental filings," James said, voice even. "Parcel numbers attached." He slid the map and a list across. The clerk skimmed, frowned, and typed with 2 fingers. "There's a no further action letter on file, 8 years ago." He squinted at the screen. "Signed by a consultant on behalf of the owner." He printed the record. Maya's hands were warm with the paper. She traced the lines of the authorization company name she didn't recognize, Amaranth Urban Holdings, followed by a signature that matched the curl and angle from the map attachment. The letter looked official, but wrong seal placement. A notary stamp at 2:13 a.m. The city watermark, faint as if passed through too many hands. Maya lifted her gaze. "Is there an original scan?" The clerk hesitated, then lowered his voice. "There's a disc. It glitches." He slid it under the glass. "You didn't get this from me." They watched it spin up on a corner computer. The image broke into digital snow, then steadied just long enough to catch a frame, a different letterhead in the header, hastily overlaid by Amaranth's logo. A bad mask job for anyone who knew what to look for. James exhaled, controlled, but tight. Forgery or sloppiness? Both tell the same story. Maya said, "Someone wanted approval fast." The site lay behind a chain-link fence, 2 blocks off a schoolyard, a bald rectangle of dirt and weeds, where a factory once breathed. Evening heat rose from the earth. A mother pushing a stroller paused, watching them from the sidewalk. "We're evaluating the land," Maya said gently. "Has anyone taken community samples?" The woman gave a small, tired laugh. "People take pictures. My nephew got rashes when he played there years back. They posted a sign, and then the sign disappeared." She introduced herself as Tasha and pointed to the far corner. "When it rains, it puddles black over there. Smells like a tire shop." "Thank you," Maya said. "If we move forward, it won't be without you in the room." They set to work with a precision that felt like prayer stainless steel augers, nitrile gloves, pre-labeled jars. Maya called out coordinates. James wrote them down, photos with timestamps, GPS overlays, and duplicates for every point. A courier waited in a rented hatchback, chain of custody forms, already clipped to a board. A black SUV idled a car length too long by the curb. Maya felt the stare without looking up. "Keep moving," she said. They broke the crust at the corner Tasha had flagged. The soil under the top layer was the color of coffee grounds, and smelled faintly sweet wrong industrial. Maya sealed the jar, pressed the tape shut, and looked at James. He didn't speak, but his eyes answered. We tell the truth, whatever it is. Sabotage tried to slip easily through the cracks of routine. In the lobby of their building, the courier wheeled in a cooler, just as a maintenance cart came out of the service elevator. A bump, a polite apology, a switch would have been invisible if Maya hadn't registered the wrong heft when she lifted the lid. This isn't ours, she said quietly. The courier blinked. Ma'am, condensation pattern, Maya said, placing her palm on the cooler wall. Wrong temperature curve for the ice pack timestamp. She turned the latch on the other cooler. Inside lay 6 jars with the correct labels and the wrong dirt light. Sandy fill, not the heavy silt they'd wrestled from Tasha's corner. James's jaw set. He keyed security to pull footage. They watched the maintenance cart pause on screen, and a man in a cap turned the switch with magician's hands. He looked up once straight into the camera and smiled as if daring them to catch him. Send the correct samples by hand, James told the courier. Take the stairs with me. We'll walk them to the car. They did. Lauren called from a number James hadn't blocked that night because part of him wanted the fight. She didn't waste time. You can still salvage this, she said. Withdraw the application. Announce a pivot, sell the parcel. Try another block, something clean. I'll make sure the past stays politely buried. And what do you want? James asked. You're not a fool. The voice was velvet over a wire. You remove her from the project. You do business with grown-ups, not gardeners with delusions of grandeur. He closed his eyes and saw Maya kneeling over the manifold, turning a dead system alive. He opened them. No. Then you'll own a poisoned field and a dead reputation, Lauren said, and hung up. The lab called the next afternoon preliminary spectrometry. The technician's voice was measured professional and merciless. Lead levels were above residential thresholds at 4 of 6 points. Volatile organics benzene and toluene are present in 2. We recommend a complete delineation and a temporary fence upgrade. You have an exposure risk. Maya thanked him and ended the call. She let the heaviness settle for a moment on the plan on her chest. She had always believed land could heal when given care, but care was not denial. James stood by the window, watching the weather roll over the river. We can't build until it's clean. We won't, she said. We designed the cleanup with the same rigor as the park. Excavation where we must, phytoremediation where we can. Jobs for locals. Open-air monitoring, weekly reports. No spin. His phone chimed. Mueller board can extend timeline if remediation plan is credible and community-backed. Send costs. Another line followed a beat later. Press is circling. Move first. Then we go public, James said. Full statement. Today. Tonight? Maya corrected. We invite the neighborhood to hear it first. Evan knocked on the conference room door an hour before their meeting and closed it behind him. He looked like a man who had been outrunning himself for miles and had finally turned around. I'm done, he said, voice rough. He set a thumb drive on the table. Richard paid me to slow you down. He said it would be harmless. Then it wasn't. Chat logs, payments, and a scheduling calendar for that cap-wearing magician. Use it. I'm sorry. Maya studied him. You're late. I know, he said. I can testify. James nodded once. Then you will. Evan's shoulders sagged, relief painful on his face. They drafted slides like blueprints for a new promise. Maps of hotspots. Cost ranges for removal and treatment. Time frames, protections, who would be hired, and when. At the top of the deck, one sentence in plain language. We will not build over poison. We will clean it first. James insisted Maya take the first 20 minutes. You're the reason this part is honest, he said. Lead. She smiled at that, small but real. Night settled deep and clean over the city. The community room they'd rented smelled of coffee and folding chairs. Tasha came, folded her arms, and listened with the other neighbors as Maya laid out the findings without euphemism. She watched the flinch when the word benzene landed, then watched shoulders square when Maya followed with monitoring jobs and accountability. James spoke next about cost time and a fund to pay for interim protections around the schoolyard. He finished with a number and a date he didn't say out loud until that moment. It felt like jumping and discovering the ground would be there. Phones buzzed as people filmed. Heads nodded slowly. When the questions began, they were sharp, not hostile. It was a beginning. They had just finished when every screen in the room lit up with the same push alert. Exclusive Carter email tells staff to bury the lead on soil risks. Maya's stomach dropped at the grotesque pun. James's face went still, as if someone had pressed pause. He opened the article. A screenshot of an email sat in the center, allegedly from him to Evan and 2 managers. "We can't spook investors. Keep the lead out of the top lines. Bury the lead until the board votes. Timestamp yesterday, 5:07 p.m. The window when he had been walking samples down 12 flights of stairs." Evan whispered hoarse, "That's not real. I never got that." Mueller texted, "Is it fake? I need a statement in 10 minutes. A new message landed on Maya's phone from the anonymous number that had sent the map. "Nice speech about soil. Let's see you dig yourselves out of this." She lifted her head. Outside, thunder threaded the sky. Inside, the room hummed with a new nervous energy. The neighbors watched, deciding whether to stay with them or step back. James met her eyes. He said we had to prove the truth again, but the words had to fight the siren of the headline. Maya closed the article and steadied her breath. "Then we start with the only thing we have," she said. "Receipts." She turned to the crowd, lifted the mic, and began, even as another alert flashed red across every screen. The hearing had been moved up to the morning. The morning cracked open with rain tapping on the glass walls of Carter Enterprises. James barely noticed. His phone lay on the desk, glowing with headlines that hadn't stopped multiplying since midnight. Carter caught hiding, led investors' trust in Jeopardy community, betrayed again. Every screen carried the same screenshot, the forged email with his name at the bottom. His signature looked perfect, his phrasing uncomfortably close to words he had used in other contexts. Whoever fabricated it had studied him. Maya stepped into the office, her coat damp, her shoulders squared against the storm outside. She set a folder down on his desk. "Receipts," she said. Inside, delivery logs from the courier, time-stamped photos of them carrying samples down the stairwell at the exact minute the email had supposedly been sent, and Evan's affidavit signed at dawn, declaring he had never received or seen the message. James rubbed his forehead. "Truth means nothing if the lie runs faster." "Then we make the truth run louder," Maya said. The board hearing had been moved up to 9 a.m. sharp. At 8:45, the conference hall buzzed with voices like an angry hive. Reporters lined the back row, cameras poised. Investors filled the long oval table, faces stern tablets, ready to document every word. Hans Mueller sat at the head, gray eyes, unreadable. He raised a hand, and the room quieted. "Mr. Carter," he said, his accent precise. "You are accused of concealing hazardous conditions from this board and the community. Why should we believe you now?" James opened his folder, but before he could speak, Maya touched his arm. "Let me start." A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Mueller inclined his head. Maya stepped forward, her voice clear. "The email is a forgery. When it was supposedly written, I was personally with Mr. Carter, escorting soil samples to our courier. We documented every step, photos, timestamps, witness forms. We can prove it with metadata. She projected the images on the screen. James' sleeves rolled, carrying the heavy cooler, a clock visible on the wall behind him. A second image showed the courier scanning forms with his handheld device, the timestamp matching exactly. Whoever sent that email underestimated us, Maya continued. They assumed we wouldn't track our own chain of custody. But we do. Every jar, every sample, every minute is logged. This is transparency. The board murmured. Some nodded. Others exchanged skeptical glances. James took his turn. The person forging this knows my habits, knows my tone. This is not a coincidence, it's targeted sabotage. And it's coming from inside this network of rivals, not from us. Mueller studied the screen, then lifted his gaze. You offer evidence, yes, but your enemies are skillful. How do we know they won't strike again? Investors need stability. James's jaw tightened. Stability isn't avoiding conflict. It's surviving it. And we intend to prove that. The hearing paused for recess. Reporters surged toward the hallway, voices overlapping like thunder. James and Maya retreated to a side room, Evan trailing behind, pale and wrung out. They'll never stop, Evan muttered. Richard, Lauren, they'll keep bleeding you with headlines until Mueller has no choice. Then we flip it, Maya said. She paced, thinking fast. We don't react, we attack. If we expose who created the forgery, the headlines change. And how do we do that in less than a day? James asked. Evan swallowed hard. I might know. When Richard hired me, he used an encrypted chat platform. I saved everything when I panicked last night. There's metadata IP traces. He held up a flash drive. If we can connect it to him or Lauren, they're finished. James stared at him. Why didn't you say this sooner? Because I was afraid, Evan said. His voice cracked. But if I don't fix this, I'll never breathe again. Maya stepped closer, took the drive and locked it in her bag. Then we moved fast. They found their ally in the least expected place, Mueller's aide, a quiet man named Henrik, who had been watching Maya since the ballroom dinner. In the recess, he approached her, lowering his voice. I heard your testimony, he said. If you genuinely have metadata, I can get you a forensic analyst. Off the record but reliable. You'll have to trust me. Maya hesitated. Trust had become a currency too expensive to spend lightly. But James gave a curt nod. Within the hour, they were in a side office with Henrik's contact, a wiry technician with quick fingers. He plugged in the drive, screens flickering. Lines of code scrolled like rainfall. Here, he said at last, pointing. Yes, messages are routed through a VPN. But look closer. One slip. Someone accessed the platform without the cloak. Same IP address, same timestamp. Maya leaned in. The address pointed to a corporate suite registered under Amaranth Urban Holdings, the shell company from the forged letter. James exhaled sharply. And who's on their board? Henrik tapped a key. Lauren Prescott's name glowed on the screen. Back in the hearing room, the atmosphere had sharpened. Reporters whispered hungrily, cameras already angled. Mueller raised a hand again. We reconvene. James stood folder in hand, but Maya spoke first. We have new evidence. The alleged email forgery came from a network connected to Amaranth Urban Holdings, the same shell company behind the falsified soil clearance 8 years ago. And on their board sits Lauren Prescott. Gasps rippled. Heads turned. Maya pressed forward. This is not a coincidence. It's a pattern: falsified clearance, attempted sabotage, planted photographs, forged communications. A web designed to collapse this project and restore power to those who profited from the land's decay. We have the metadata. We can share it with every regulator in the city. The screen flashed with the IP, traced the chat logs, and the link to Amaranth. It was damning in its precision. Reporters' fingers flew across keyboards. Investors leaned forward murmuring. Mueller's eyes flicked to James. "Do you confirm this?" Carter James's voice carried like steel. "Yes. And I will not build a future on poison or lies. We'll clean the ground with the community transparently. If anyone doubts it, they can walk away. But this is the truth." Silence held for a beat, heavy and electric. Then the room erupted, half with outrage, half with approval. Later in the private lounge, James sank into a chair, shoulders heavy, but his eyes alive with the fight. Maya stood by the window, looking down at the streets where cameras and protesters had gathered. "They'll strike again," James said quietly. "Let them," Maya answered. "Every strike reveals their hand. Every forgery exposes more truth." He looked at her, the storm outside reflecting in his gaze. "I almost gave in once. I thought stability was silence. But you showed me that noise can be a strength." Maya turned, meeting his eyes. "Noise isn't enough. We need roots. Deep ones. The community, the data, the soil itself. That's how we win." The door opened. Henrik stepped inside, his face unreadable. "You've bought time. But there's something else you should know." They braced. He set down a folder. Inside lay a series of city contracts awarded quietly to Amaranth in the past year. One was stamped just last week. The parcel wasn't the only poisoned ground they had, more across the boroughs. Henrik said, "This is bigger than one project. Much bigger." Thunder cracked outside, rattling the glass. Maya felt the weight settle on her chest. Heavy, urgent, impossible to ignore. James picked up the folder, his jaw tightening. "Then we're not just fighting for our deal," he said. "We're fighting for the city." The storm outside answered with lightning. And in that charged silence, they both knew the real battle had only begun. Rain had rinsed Manhattan through the night, leaving the streets raw and slick. The storm had passed by dawn, but its residue lingered like tension in the air. Inside, Carter Enterprises' James and Maya sifted through Henrik's folder of contracts, every page tightening the knot in their stomachs. Amaranth Urban Holdings wasn't just a shell. It was a cancer with roots across the boroughs. Parcels scattered like breadcrumbs. Former industrial yards, vacant lots, abandoned warehouses. Each one carried the faint signature of silence permits filed at odd hours, stamps that looked official but fell apart under scrutiny. Maya spread the documents across the long conference table, her hand tracing the pattern. They've been buying poisoned land and passing it off clean for years, and no one noticed because no one wanted to. James leaned forward, elbows on the table, his jaw taut. "They bury evidence, flip the property, and sell it as development ready. We've only scratched the surface. If these numbers are correct, entire neighborhoods could be sitting on contamination." Henrik's expression was grim. "And the money doesn't stop with Lauren. Richard Ellison sits on Amaranth's advisory board. He profits every time they push one of these parcels through. He has as much to lose as she does." James's knuckles whitened against the table. "That explains the campaign. They take me down, discredit the project, and keep their machine running. They won't stop with lies," Henrik added. "You've hit them where it hurts their secrets." The first hit landed that very afternoon. At 2:14 p.m., James's phone buzzed with a flood of alerts. A popular financial blog had published a scathing exposé, Carter's desperation play. Can a gardener save a doomed empire? The article painted Maya as an unqualified pawn, mocking her rooftop gardens as window dressing, and sneering at James's romantic entanglement with the help. Photos of them walking side by side at the community meeting were splashed across the page, cropped to imply intimacy instead of strategy. Maya read it once, then closed the screen. "This is how they fight strip dignity. twist motives, distract from facts. James wanted to throw the phone, but he steadied his voice. Then we stay louder than they are. The data speaks for itself, but inside a flicker of doubt gnawed. Would the board listen to numbers when gossip sold faster? That evening, they convened with the community again in a gymnasium that smelled of varnish and echoes. Folding chairs lined the court, filled with neighbors, parents, and teenagers with phones raised to film. Maya stood at the front, a poster board behind her marked with soil data charts. She walked them through the contamination, the remediation plan, and the jobs it would create. Her voice was clear, unwavering, but the murmurs in the crowd told her the blog had done its work. A man in the back raised his voice. How do we know you're not just another developer feeding us lies? Same as the rest. Maya met his eyes. Because I live here too. Because I touch the soil myself. I'm telling you what's in it. Because we aren't hiding the danger, we're showing it. And because every decision from here on out, you'll be part of. The man didn't answer, but the room softened just slightly. James stepped forward next. I can't change your mind with words if anyone doubts my motives. Only with what we do next. So here's my promise. No shovel touches that ground until it's clean. And you'll have access to every report. It wasn't applause that followed, but something quieter, sturdier. Nods, murmurs of assent. A current of trust is beginning to regrow. But as they left the gym, a black sedan rolled slowly past windows, tinted engine purring like a threat. Maya's instincts sharpened. She grabbed James's sleeve, pulling him toward the curb. The sedan didn't stop, it only idled at the corner long enough for the driver to lower the window and flick a cigarette into the gutter. She caught the profile in the dim light. Richard Ellison. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The message was clear. They're watching. Maya whispered. James's voice was low. Then let them see us win. The next morning, their battle moved to the city hall. A subcommittee had been convened to review the Amaranth parcels after whispers of fraud reached the press. James and Maya arrived with Henrik carrying binders of evidence. Lauren was already there, draped in crimson silk, her poise immaculate. Richard sat beside her, polished as ever, his smile ablade. Cameras flashed as they took their seats at the long mahogany table. The committee chair, a weary councilman with glasses slipping down his nose, gestured for statements. Lauren went first. Her voice was syrupy, polished, and disarming. Amaranth Urban Holdings has continuously operated within the law. These accusations are the desperate thrashings of a man whose empire is crumbling. I should know I once built it with him. Her gaze slid to James, a dagger beneath velvet. Richard followed with statistics of his own development, timelines, jobs allegedly created, and tax revenues. Carter's project is theater. Ours is history, a record of progress. Then it was Maya's turn. She rose unflinching and laid photos on the table, soil jars, contamination reports, forged documents alongside the originals. Her voice carried the cadence of truth, steady and straightforward. This isn't progress. It's poison with a price tag. If it continues, you gamble with lives, not just numbers. Cameras clicked wildly. Council members leaned forward murmuring, and then James played his card. He clicked the projector, revealing the metadata. Henrik's analyst had traced the chat logs, the IP slip, the connection to Amaranth. The timestamp hovered over Lauren's name like a spotlight. A gasp spread through the room. Lauren's smile faltered, but only for a second. She recovered with venom. Does this prove anything? Screenshots? Anyone can fake a file. What you have is nothing. But Richard's jaw tightened, his composure cracking. His hand clenched the arm of his chair, knuckles pale. Maya saw it, and so did the cameras. The session recessed in chaos. Reporters swarmed the hallway demanding statements. Microphones shoved forward like spears. James and Maya moved through the press wall side by side, the flash of bulbs painting their faces in relentless strobe. James turned to her inside the marble lobby, away from the noise. We rattled them. Richard's mask slipped. Maya nodded. But that makes him dangerous. He'll lash out harder now. James's phone vibrated as if on cue, a message from an unknown number. Check your accounts. He opened his banking app. The screen turned his blood cold. $500,000 had been transferred overnight from one of his business accounts to an offshore entity under his own authorization code. Impossible, he whispered. Maya leaned over his shoulder. They've hacked you. They're framing you again. Its weight was pressed down heavier than any forged email. Financial fraud. Embezzlement. Another weapon sharpened. James, she said softly but firmly. This is what they do. Bury us under layers of lies until no one remembers the truth. But we'll fight them. We have to. He closed the app, forcing his breathing steady. Then we fight harder. We prove this theft isn't mine. We expose every thread until the whole web collapses. Outside, thunder rumbled again, though the sky above the city was clear. And in that echo, Maya realized the storm wasn't weather anymore. It was war. The fraud alert spread like wildfire. By mid-morning, 3 networks had picked up the story. Carter Empire, in crisis offshore accounts, raise questions. Anchors recited the details with clipped precision screens split between James's face and graphs of plunging stock prices. In the Carter Enterprises lobby, investors whispered in tight circles. Staff avoided eye contact. Every passing glance carried the question, is it true? James stood in his office, phone buzzing nonstop, hands clenched against the desk. The storm outside seemed to echo the chaos inside. They've escalated, he said. His voice was calm only because he forced it to be. Emails, land clearance forgeries, and now financial theft. They're stacking lies until one sticks. Maya leaned against the window frame, arms crossed. We don't wait for them to finish the story. We write it ourselves. He looked at her, exhausted. And how do we prove a theft I never made? She picked up the folder from yesterday's hearing and tapped the edge. We show the mechanics. If they cloned your authorization, there's a trail wrong. Keystrokes a foreign login. We need digital forensics. Which takes time, he muttered. Then we buy time by making noise. She replied. Public noise. If they can stage a trial in the media, so can we. The press conference was hastily arranged that afternoon in the rooftop garden. Cameras lined along the perimeter, microphones thrust toward the lavender beds. Reporters' eyes glinted with hunger. Blood had been spilled, and they were circling. James stepped up first. His tie was loose rain dampening the shoulders of his jacket. The accusations of embezzlement are false. Funds were siphoned through my account by external actors tied to Amaranth Urban Holdings. We've engaged independent auditors to prove it. Reporters shouted questions. Do you deny the signature? Isn't this just more cover-up? Maya stepped forward, the city buzzing beneath her. Let me be clear. These same actors forged environmental clearance documents, tampered with our irrigation system, and manufactured fake emails. Now they're forging financial records. The pattern is evident. Every time we present truth, they escalate the lie. That's not business, that's sabotage. The garden quieted for a moment. The cameras drank in her words, balanced against the scent of damp earth and lavender. A reporter raised his voice. Miss Johnson, why should the public believe you, someone without financial or corporate experience? Her chin lifted. Because the soil doesn't lie. When we tested it, it told the truth. Contamination. And just like the soil, the system leaves traces. You can cover it for a time, but truth resurfaces. Always. It wasn't applause that followed, but it was something better. A silence where skepticism softened into thought. That night, the rooftop transformed into a war room. Henrik arrived with 2 laptops, his sleeves rolled back, eyes sharp. He connected to the secure server screens flashing with streams of numbers and IP addresses. Here, he said after an hour, pointing to the log, a transfer executed with Carter's credentials. But look closer. The login originates in Zurich. Your phone geotagged you in New York at the same minute. James leaned closer, a spark of hope flickering. So, it's irrefutable, substantial evidence, Henrik said. But it needs validation from an external auditor. Otherwise, they'll cry tampering. Maya frowned. And how long does that take? 2 days. Maybe 3. We don't have 3, James said. He glanced at the city lights beyond the glass. The board could collapse by morning. Maya studied the logs, her brows furrowed. What if we flip it faster? A live demonstration. Show the press how your account works in real time, then expose the Zurich login simultaneously. Let them see the fraud unfold. Henrik hesitated. Dangerous. If something goes wrong, everything's already wrong, James cut in. We'll do it. The following evening, the Grand Meridian Ballroom filled again, not with tuxedos, but journalists, auditors, and curious citizens who smelled scandal. Cameras lined the walls. Lauren and Richard arrived fashionably late, gliding into the room with smug assurance. Richard adjusted his cufflinks, whispering loud enough for James to hear, "This crowd will eat you alive." James ignored him. He took the stage with Maya beside him, Henrik at the laptop. James said, voice steady, "Tonight, we'll prove how the theft occurred." Henrik displayed the dashboard on the projector. Mr. Carter will authorize a transfer of $1 to a local charity. Watch closely. Every keystroke, every login recorded live. James typed. The screen showed his account credentials and the transfer pinging in seconds. Applause rippled politely. Now, Henrik continued. We'll show you what's happening in Zurich. He pulled up the second screen, a live tracker glowing red. At that exact moment, another transfer request appeared, $10,000, routed offshore, tagged with Carter's credentials. The room gasped. It's a ghost login. Henrik said a cloned key in the system. The same signature executed from thousands of miles away. Maya stepped forward. Proof of sabotage. Proof of forgery. Evidence that the accusations against him are lies. Reporters erupted, flashes blinding. Questions volleyed across the stage. The narrative had shifted suspicion to revelation, scandal to conspiracy. But in the back of the room, Lauren's smile didn't falter. She leaned toward Richard, murmuring words only he could hear. He smirked, raising his glass. Later, in the quiet of the rooftop, Maya found James staring at the city again, shoulders rigid, but eyes more precise than they'd been in days. You turned the tide, she said softly. We bought breathing room, he replied, but not victory. Lauren's still playing. Maya stepped closer. Then we keep exposing. We drag every move she makes into the light. He turned to her, blue eyes searching. You've stood against every storm. Why? Her voice was quiet, but steady. Because the city deserves the truth. And because, somewhere along the way, your fight became mine. The air hummed between them, for a moment too heavy with exhaustion, too sharp with unspoken possibility. Then the rooftop door creaked open. Henrik emerged holding a phone. His face was pale. It's not over, he said. Our Zurich trace caught something else. The ghost login isn't just linked to Amaranth servers. It's tied directly to a government contractor, someone high enough to bury this. The words struck like a blow. Maya's voice was low. So we're not just fighting Lauren and Richard anymore. No, James said, his chest tightening. We're fighting an entire system that protects them. The city wind rose, carrying the echo of traffic and sirens, as if the streets themselves knew a reckoning was near. The Zurich revelation landed like a grenade. By morning, The press was ablaze with speculation. Carter's sabotage, linked to government contracts. Amaranth's hidden ties to federal vendors. Every article carried the same undercurrent. If Amaranth's network ran deep enough to reach contractors with clearance, this fight was larger than real estate. It was politics, influence, and power. James sat in his office, sleepless, his jaw set against the swirl of headlines. His reflection in the glass wall looked more like a defendant than a businessman. Maya walked in with 2 coffees, setting one down before him. Her expression was calm, but her voice was blunt. They're going to use this to bury us further. If federal ties are confirmed, we're up against something that won't just smear you. It could erase us. James looked up, fatigue carved in his face. Should I walk away? No, she said. We should stop waiting for them to attack. We go straight to the root. The first fissure between them opened in a strategy meeting with Henrik hours later. Henrik laid out the options, tapping his laptop screen. We can escalate to regulators, but your enemies will close ranks if the contractor angle holds. Or we go to the press with everything Amaranth's parcels, the forged clearance letters, the ghost logins. Sunlight is the only defense. James shook his head. Going public without airtight proof of the contractor link is suicide. They'll paint us as conspiracy theorists and bury the evidence deeper. Maya leaned forward, her tone sharp. Silence is worse. Every time we hesitate, they move first. Look at the pattern. It's not hesitation. James snapped the veneer, cracking. It's a strategy. I've lost before by rushing, and I won't do it again. The room went still. Maya's eyes hardened. Then you'd rather protect yourself than fight for the truth. The words landed heavy, a wound neither of them had prepared for. They worked separately that afternoon. James locked in calls with attorneys Maya in the rooftop garden with community volunteers. The distance between them widened with every passing hour. On the roof, Maya guided a teenager named Jordan in planting native grasses in raised beds. She kept her voice even, but anger and disappointment simmered inside her chest. She replayed James's words, strategy, not hesitation, and wondered if he still saw the soil as anything more than leverage. Jordan wiped sweat from his brow. Why do you care so much about this place? Maya paused, then answered quietly. Because the land remembers how it's treated. And so do people. James was alone in the empty penthouse that evening, with an untouched whiskey glass. He replayed Maya's sharp tone in his head, her unwavering eyes. He knew she wasn't wrong. Amaranth thrived on silence, on people too afraid to shout. But the thought of losing again, of collapsing publicly like last year's scandal, made his hands tremble. On his desk lay the old photo of him and Lauren at a gala, the smile she had weaponized years later. He shoved it into a drawer, unable to bear the ghost of her betrayal, lingering over him now. The silence pressed in. He realized he wasn't afraid of the scandal, he was scared of losing Maya's trust. The next day, battle found them first. Community organizers had set up a rally outside City Hall to demand transparency. Maya was invited to speak. James hesitated, but she insisted on going. If you want to play strategy, that's fine, but I'll fight where people can hear me. Hundreds gathered in the rain. Umbrellas bobbed like dark blossoms. Maya took the stage, water dripping from her hair, her voice amplified over the crowd. They think poisoned ground can be hidden under paperwork. They think signatures and stamps erase danger. But the land speaks. It tells us what's buried, and it tells us who's lying. The crowd roared. James stood at the edge, soaked, listening. Pride warred with fear inside him. He could see how easily her fire could be twisted into a headline, how Amaranth would clip her words and mock her. Yet, he also saw the truth. Whether he was ready or not, She carried them both with that fire. When the rally ended, a car door slammed across the street. Richard appeared, his suit immaculate, despite the weather, flanked by 2 bodyguards. He clapped slowly, mocking applause. Impressive, he called, his voice carrying over the thinning crowd. But speeches don't change contracts. Maya walked toward him, chin high. Neither do threats. Richard smirked. You're loud now. But the system doesn't bend for gardeners and idealists. It chews them up. His gaze flicked to James. And Carter knows it. James's fists clenched. He wanted to lunge to fight with fists instead of words. But Maya's hand on his arm stopped him. Her touch was grounding, a reminder of soil under nails of roots deeper than arrogance. Richard stepped into his car, his smile sharp through the tinted glass as it rolled away. That night, silence hung between them again. They sat in the rooftop garden, lavender swaying in the damp air, city lights flickering below. Finally, James broke it. You were proper yesterday. I was afraid. Not one of them of failing again, of dragging you down with me. Maya looked at him, eyes softer now. I don't care if we fall, James. I care if we stop fighting. He exhaled, tension loosening from his shoulders. Then we fight. Together. The words hung between them, raw and honest. For the first time in days, the distance eased. Henrik arrived late, carrying another folder. His face was pale urgency etched into his features. They're moving faster than we thought, he said. A hearing's been scheduled for 3 days from now. Federal oversight. They'll use the embezzlement and the contractor tie to bury you permanently. Maya took the folder and flipped it open. Inside were schedules, witness lists, and preliminary motions. Her eyes caught one line that made her breath hitch. Lauren Prescott read aloud. She's testifying. James felt his chest tighten. She's going to paint me as reckless. Again. No, Maya said firmly, closing the folder. She's going to paint both of us as frauds, which means we need to expose her before she gets the chance. The night wind carried the scent of lavender through the garden, sharp and clean. Their bond had cracked, but held. And in that fragile steadiness, they both knew the next battle would either shatter everything or bind them forever. 3 days felt like a countdown to execution. Every headline was a drumbeat, every phone call a blade. By the morning of the federal hearing, the city seemed to hold its breath. James stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, tying his tie with deliberate precision. He had faced boardrooms, hostile takeovers, and betrayals splashed across tabloids. Yet nothing weighed heavier than the thought of Lauren on that witness stand, her words sharpened into weapons only she could wield. From the doorway, Maya watched him, her arms folded, her expression unreadable. Don't let her dictate the story, she said quietly. We tell it first. He nodded, but doubt shadowed his eyes. The hearing chamber was an amphitheater of marble and microphones, the seal of government glinting above the dais. Rows of journalists filled the back laptops, open eyes gleaming. The air buzzed with anticipation, the scent of ink and ambition. The chair called the session to order. We are here to examine allegations of financial misconduct tied to Carter Enterprises and concerns about fraudulent environmental clearances. Lauren walked in on cue, crimson dress, a statement, her stride confident. Cameras flashed like lightning as she took her seat at the witness table. She didn't so much as glance at James. When called, her voice was velvet, threaded with venom. I regret to say this, but James Carter has a history of reckless risk-taking. His desperation has led him to cut corners, conceal inconvenient truths, and manipulate appearances. This project is just the latest example. The words hit with precision, a carefully rehearsed blade. She produced a folder, sliding it toward the committee. Internal memos. Emails suggesting he knew about the contamination and sought to minimize its impact. Reporters leaned forward. Cameras zoomed in. James's attorney bristled objecting, but the damage was done. The memos, forged or not, were in the record. Lauren's gaze flicked briefly toward Maya, cold and assessing, and this sudden reliance on a rooftop gardener, she added, voice lilting with false sympathy. It's a distraction, a sentimental story to mask incompetence. The insult burned, but Maya didn't flinch. During recess, the hall swarmed with reporters. Questions flew like arrows. James kept his head down, his jaw locked. But Maya stopped, turned and faced the crowd. "You want the truth," she said, her voice carrying. "Then look at the soil samples we pulled. Look at the forged clearance letters. Look at the digital trail that ties Amaranth to every fraud in this case. You've seen it. You've printed it. And yet you let theatrics distract you." Cameras flashed wildly. Her words weren't a speech, but a gauntlet thrown at their feet. Back inside, Henrik slid into the row behind them, whispering urgently. "We found something in Amaranth's records. Financial transfers are routed through the contractor Lauren's company, used during your divorce settlement. The dates overlap. She was laundering influence even then." James's pulse quickened. "Can we prove it?" Henrik nodded. "We need 5 minutes with the committee's IT staff. The chain will be locked if we cross-check the contractor's invoices with Amaranth's payments." Maya leaned close. "Then do it. Now." The second half of the hearing began with Richard Ellison on the stand. He spoke smoothly, oozing authority. "Amaranth has created jobs and revitalized neighborhoods. Carter's smear campaign aims to claw back relevance after his failures." But even as he spoke, Henrik's phone buzzed with updates. He passed a slip of paper forward. Maya read it first, her eyes narrowing, then placed it before James. "Proof secured. Contractor invoices match Amaranth payments. Funds routed through Prescott Consulting." It was the link they needed. When James rose to speak, the room shifted. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than fury ever could. "You've heard accusations," he began steadily. "Now hear facts. Amaranth Urban Holdings paid a government contractor under the guise of Prescott Consulting, the very same contractor implicated in the ghost logins used to frame me for embezzlement. Payment records confirm the timeline. This isn't speculation. This is collusion." He handed the records to the committee clerk. The projector lit up with highlighted invoices, account numbers, and dates. Gasps rippled across the chamber. Lauren's composure cracked for the first time, a flicker of tension tightening her jaw. Richard's hand twitched against the table, his smile faltering. Maya stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of every rooftop she'd ever planted. "This isn't just about one deal. It's about a system of lies built on poisoned ground. They forge documents, manipulate data, bury contamination, and steal lives for profit. But the land remembers. And now so do we." The words hung in the chamber like a verdict. When the hearing adjourned, the hallway erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted, phones rang, the tide of narrative shifting before their eyes. Lauren swept past her face, a mask of fury, Richard close behind. For the first time, neither spoke, neither smiled. Henrik joined James and Maya at the exit, relief in his eyes. "You turned it. The committee can't ignore that evidence." James exhaled slowly, the weight of months easing, if only slightly. "We bought ground," he said. "But it's still a battlefield." Maya's gaze was steady. "Then we plant deeper. Roots don't break in storms, they anchor." Back on the rooftop that night, the city sprawled beneath them, restless and alive. Lavender swayed in the breeze, the scent sharp, grounding. James leaned on the railing, looking at Maya. "You saved me today." She shook her head. "We saved each other." For a moment, silence stretched, not empty, but full of unspoken truths. The war wasn't over. More strikes would come. But something new had grown in that fragile space, between exhaustion and resolve. And just as James opened his mouth to speak, Maya's phone buzzed with a message. She read it, her breath catching. Nice speech. But you've only unearthed one root. Dig deeper and the rot goes further than you think. Attached was a city map, dozens of parcels highlighted far beyond Amaranth's holdings. Maya's hand trembled as she turned the screen toward James. This isn't just them, she whispered. It's everyone. The night air thickened the lavender, shivering like the earth braced for what was coming. The map glowed between them, an entire city speckled in red. Far beyond Amaranth's reach, dozens of parcels were marked like open wounds. Maya's hand hovered over the screen, as if touching it might make the contamination real, the weight unbearable. James stared at it, his chest tightening. It's bigger than we imagined. They're not just hiding poisoned ground, they've built an empire on it. And if it reaches the federal level, Maya said quietly, it means collusion far above Lauren and Richard. This rot runs deep. The rooftop garden hummed with night sounds, but neither felt peace. They knew the next confrontation would define everything: their credibility, the project, even their survival. The following morning, Carter Enterprises was electric with tension. A board vote had been scheduled for that evening, and it was called hastily after the hearing. Officially, the agenda was to decide whether the urban development project would proceed. Unofficially, it was a referendum on James himself. Henrik spread documents across the table. The evidence against Amaranth shifted momentum, but the board is fractured. Half want to distance themselves from controversy. Half see the opportunity in remediation contracts. The swing votes are unpredictable. James rubbed his temples. They'll try to turn the undecided with fear. If I lose the vote, the project dies, and our credibility dies. Maya leaned forward. Then we make them see what's at stake. Not money, lives. The community needs to be in that room. James glanced up. The board doesn't allow outside speakers. Then we break tradition, Maya replied. You hired me to stand in rooms where I don't belong. Let me do it again. The vote convened in a ballroom, repurposed into a board chamber. Chandeliers gleamed overhead, the long mahogany table stretching like a battlefield line. Men and women in tailored suits filled the seats, eyes sharp, whispers clipped. Reporters were barred, but their presence pressed from outside cameras waiting for the verdict. Lauren was there too, poised, her expression perfectly neutral. Richard leaned against the wall, hands clasped behind his back, smile thin and poisonous. James entered with Maya at his side. A stir rippled through the room, the unexpected presence of someone not on the payroll, not in the club. The chair cleared his throat. This meeting will determine the future of Carter Enterprises' proposed development. A yes vote advances the project. A no vote terminates it. James stood, opening the floor. Before you cast judgment, you need to hear from someone who knows the soil better than anyone in this room. Maya Johnson. The murmurs sharpened into disbelief. The chair started to object, but James raised a hand. If we claim transparency, we prove it now. Reluctantly, the room stilled. Maya stepped forward, the lavender pin from her grandmother fastened at her lapel. Her voice was calm, deliberate. This project isn't about luxury towers or glossy headlines. It's about poisoned ground and the people who live above it. I've walked the parcels, pulled the soil, seen the chemicals leaching where children play. Amaranth told you it was safe. They lied. We proved it. And if you shut this down, those lies stay buried along with the communities paying the price. She laid photos on the table, contamination maps, jars labeled with coordinates, graphs of volatile chemicals. Faces around the table shifted, unease creeping through the polished armor of their suits. Lauren's voice cut the silence. Passion is not policy. Are we to gamble millions on the testimony of a gardener? Maya didn't blink. You forged clearance letters. You funded ghost logins. You laundered money through contractors to protect your empire. I may be a gardener, but the earth doesn't lie. And neither do I. A ripple of gasps rolled across the board. The vote began. Each member spoke their choice aloud. Yes. No. Yes. No. The tally crept closer, the split narrowing, until only 3 votes remained. The swing members shifted uncomfortably, glancing at their papers at each other, at Lauren's steely glare. Henrik leaned forward, whispering, "If they fold, it's over." Then one of the undecided cleared her throat. "I have a daughter who plays near one of these parcels. I vote yes." The second leaned back, eyes on Maya. "If the contamination is real, burying it is worse than delaying." Yes. The final vote hung in the air. Silence pressed down like a weight. Lauren's eyes bored the man's skull, Richard's smile razor sharp. The man hesitated, lips pressed tight. Then he exhaled. Yes. The chair recorded the outcome. By majority, the project proceeds under remediation protocols. Relief surged through the room, but only on one side. Lauren's knuckles whitened against the table edge. Richard's smile vanished, replaced by a thin line of fury. After the session, Maya and James stepped into the corridor. The outside world erupted as news of the vote spread, reporters surging with questions. Cameras flashed. Headlines raced across screens before the ink was dry. "Victory won," reporters shouted. James answered, steady but restrained. "Not victory. Responsibility. We clean the ground first. Every step is transparent." Maya added, "This isn't the end. It's the beginning. And if more parcels are poisoned, we'll fight for those too." The crowd roared with questions, but they pushed through side by side. Later they stood among lavender swaying in the evening wind on the rooftop. The city lights shimmered below, restless, alive. "You saved it," James said quietly. "We saved it." Maya corrected, a faint smile softening her words. He looked at her, the weight of months still heavy, but tempered with something new. Trust fragile but absolute. "I don't know what happens next, but I know I don't want to face it without you." The moment stretched quiet, unguarded, alive with possibility. But before she could respond, Henrik rushed through the rooftop door, his face pale. "They're not finished," he said, breathless. He held up his phone screen, glowing with a live feed. A local news station was broadcasting breaking footage. A truck parked at one of the parcels had exploded minutes earlier, flames licking the night sky. The chyron scrolled in bold letters, "Carter Project under fire. Sabotage or cover-up." The lavender trembled in the sudden gust of wind. Maya's eyes met James's. "This is war," she whispered, and the city below seemed to agree. Sirens already screaming into the night. The explosion turned night into chaos. Flames devoured the old truck at the contaminated parcel, the sky pulsing, orange sirens splitting the air. News anchors filled screens with speculation. Sabotage, cover-up, eco-terrorism. The narrative spun like a storm no one could control. James and Maya stood on the rooftop watching the broadcast on Henrik's phone. The chyron screamed, "Carter Project in flames." Maya's voice was steady, but her eyes carried fire. "They lit the match to burn us down. If we don't get ahead of this, the vote means nothing." James's jaw tightened. "Then we go to the site. Tonight, we show them we're not hiding." By the time they reached the scene, the fire was nearly contained, firefighters soaking the smoking wreckage. Police lights strobed red and blue across the blackened soil. Reporters crowded behind barricades. Cameras trained like weapons. As James and Maya approached, microphones thrust toward them. Questions flew sharp and fast. "Did you stage this for sympathy? Is this proof that the soil is too dangerous to build on? Who would benefit from an explosion here?" James raised his hands. "We didn't stage this. Whoever did wanted you to doubt us again. But look at the facts. No one was hurt. No building was destroyed. Just a truck parked where it shouldn't be." Maya stepped up beside him, her voice cutting through the din. This isn't about fire. It's about fear. They want you distracted by flames so you forget the poison still in the soil. Don't look away. Keep watching. Her words landed. Reporters scribbled, cameras zoomed. Exhaustion pressed on them like lead at headquarters. But the war room buzzed with activity. Henrik spread surveillance stills across the table, grainy captures from a nearby traffic cam. There, he said, pointing to a blurred figure exiting the truck minutes before it exploded. The man's cap was tilted low, but his stance was unmistakable. Evan James whispered. Maya frowned. He confessed. He gave us evidence against Richard. Why would he? Henrik shook his head. Maybe he switched back. Or perhaps someone's puppeteering him. Either way, the cameras place him here. James slammed his fist against the table. They're framing him like they framed me. He's the next scapegoat. The next day, the board demanded an emergency press briefing. Lauren and Richard arrived first, their composure polished to a cruel gleam. Lauren spoke with feigned sorrow. How tragic that Carter's reckless project has already caused destruction. Fire, contamination, financial chaos. How many disasters before we say enough? Richard added smoothly, and noticed the silence about their so-called evidence. Conveniently, when flames appear, facts disappear. The crowd murmured doubt, thickening again. Then James and Maya stepped forward. Cameras flashed, voices rose. Maya spoke first. Facts don't disappear. They're just buried under smoke. But the soil remembers. And now so do we. Look at the vote, the evidence, the hearing transcripts. Whenever we bring truth, they answer with spectacle fire, forged emails, fake transfers. But no spectacle cleanse poisoned ground. Only work does. James followed his voice like steel. This project doesn't end with fire. It begins with it. We rebuild, remediate, and expose every hand that tried to stop us. If you want to know who's guilty, ask yourself who profits when Carter fails. Reporters erupted the narrative, bending once more. That night, the rooftop was quiet again, though the city pulsed with rumor below. Lavender swayed gently in the breeze, stubborn against the chaos. James leaned against the railing, eyes on Maya. We've been fighting shadows for months, but after tonight, the city finally saw them too. Maya nodded, her voice soft but sure. The soil doesn't lie, and neither do we. That's why we'll win. For the first time, the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was hopeful, alive with something new. But before the night could soften, Henrik appeared at the door, face pale. There's something you need to see. He handed Maya a tablet. On the screen glowed a fresh email sent minutes earlier from the same anonymous account that had tormented them for weeks. Congratulations on surviving the fire. But you've only unearthed the surface. If you want to clean this city, you must dig deeper. Much deeper. Attached another map. Twice as many parcels stretching beyond the city limits. Maya's grip tightened on the tablet. It never ends. James met her eyes, resolve burning. Then neither do we. The lavender trembled in the night wind, as if the earth whispered agreement. And here's where we leave them for now, standing on the edge of fire and soil, facing enemies larger than they imagined, but no longer alone. What do you think? Did Maya and James finally turn the tide? Or is the war just beginning? If you're rooting for them to keep digging for the truth, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next part of their story will take us even deeper, where roots tangle with secrets no one wants uncovered. Now it's your turn. Comment below. Would you stand with James and Maya, or walk away before the subsequent fire ignites?